I'm here with Bart Macumber in his home at Hatfield Point, and we're going to talk about Bart's unusual training back when he was going to high school. You served as an apprentice at a print shop.
Yes, that was at Modern Printing on Dock Street, 13 Dock Street, and had been attending junior high school on Union Street, Bayside Junior High, and our Bayview Junior High. And so in the summer of '58, when I finished grade 8, I had mentioned to a friend of mine that I was interested in the printing trade, and he knew Mr. Purdy, who was the owner of Modern Printing on Dock Street, 13 Dock Street, and I went there and after the end of grade 8 and worked all summer in what was called the bindery, which had to do with the folding and cutting of paper and preparing the booklets and gathering the books and all that sort of thing. And so I learned the binder trade that summer, and we were doing these programs for the St. John Airport for the air show for Canada Day. And then I moved up into the what is called the composing room, which is your handset type and linotype and all that sort of thing. And I learned the composing part of it and layout and design of materials. And then I moved over into the press room and studied the printing trade there with the presses, the offset presses and the letter presses. And so I learned the whole trade, and I'm very thankful that I did.
So you were telling me, quite enthusiastic. You get books from the library?
Oh yes, I would. There was one book at the St. John High School Library that I would take out for a week, and it covered the whole program of printing, and I would read it and I'd take it back and I'd get it out again, and that was my Bible, I guess, for the printing trade. And
so you were quite enthusiastic about that. The owner must have noticed that. The owner or the boss?
Oh yes, and he was very cooperative in shifting me around, and the foreman of the shop, I became close friends with him, and he taught me a lot of particularly in the composing room and the design and layout of materials and so forth.
Now you talked about a handset press.
Yes.
What was that?
Well, if you remember the Walton story and the press that John Boy used, that we had a press similar to that, and the handset type was in what was called a job case, which is similar. This is one of a California job case where you kept the individual letters, and if I can get this up right, this case here is the letter E, because E was the most used letter in the English alphabet. All the lowercase was here, and your spacing and whatnot, and the capital letters were on the right-hand side of the tray.
So that would be full of lead?
Individual lead letters. Yeah.
And
a composite of lead and zinc. Yeah.
So you would have to take, if you were doing a sentence from a line of a book, you'd have to take each individual, put the capital,
yes,
space,
yes,
and spell it out.
Yeah.
That would be very time consuming.
Oh, it is, and you had to learn where the typesetting was. Again, if you watch John Boy, and there's one episode where he is using the handset type and was put into what was called a composing stick. And of course you held it. I was left-handed, so it was awkward for me to pick the letters with my right hand and put them in. And you looked at it, you were looking at the letters upside down and backwards, so you had to be very careful where you picked out.
That would take a lot of time and talent to be able to do that.
But you could get pretty fast at it after
the more you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you would put all those in, and once you got the letters all situated, then what did you do? How did it
Then
print?
it was put together held together with, you put a string or elastic bands around it, and you set it on a tray, and then when it came time to go to the press, you would take it and set it into what they called a chase, which was a metal frame that fit down into the bed of the press, and you filled it in with blocks and coins. There were coins and coin keys that tighten it up to hold it in there, and then you put it into the back of the press, and the press, of course, you fed the paper into the press and you made the imprint on the
So when you had that all secure, so nothing
Yes.
would move.
Yeah.
So you put it into the press
And picked up the chase and carried it over, set it into the bed of the press, which usually, again, if you notice the pearl press on John Boy there, it sat down in and clamped in.
Clamped in, and
And
then
then the bed of the press came up, hit the paper, the rollers came down over the bed, came up, hit the paper, and you took the paper out, put another one in, just in a motion like that.
okay,
Continually reaching.
one page at a time.
Yeah.
How did the ink get on the letters?
Well, there were rollers that come down on a round plate that circulated around, and the rollers would pick the ink up and roll down over it and come back up again, and then the bed would come up and hit the type.
So each time it re-inked the whole,
Yeah, it was inked every print.
every print. Okay.
And
So
then it went to modern presses where they just automatically fit in by itself. Like
you mentioned when we were talking beforehand another type of press. That was the handset one.
Mm-hmm.
That would be for something that wouldn't be. You wouldn't do a book on it. Well, I suppose
you could with the linotype machine, which cast letters on this type of thing.
Yeah, just hold those up for the camera so we.
That would there would be make up for the whole body of type sort of thing, and you might use individual letters for titles and that type.
Just explain. So we have the handset, the linotype. How did that work?
Well, the linotype machine and a Ludlow, this is Ludlow type here, but you would have what they call the matrix, the brass matrix that sat into a composing stick, and then it went into a machine, and you push down for the linotype or you clamp down, and the molten lead would come up into the form and form the letters from the matrix and drop down, and you would take these individual lines of type out and put them together that way. Same as the individual letters.
So there
But
was,
it was a lot faster.
you typed it into like a typewriter, that type of a machine. And it
Well,
would,
in this, the linotype was like a typewriter. It was a big machine that the matrices would fall down and they'd cast a whole line, and the machine would put the letters back in, and
so we have two types. We have the Ludlow
yeah.
and the linotype. They were similar but not the same.
Yes, well, it did the same thing, but the linotype, of course, was faster, and you didn't have to deal with the individual letters because the machine looked after it.
Okay.
The
And
newspapers would use the linotype machine.
okay, for
Yeah,
like
for
large
so much
volumes.
type, yeah.
And the Ludlow, when would you use a Ludlow press?
The Ludlow was used mainly for headings and, or like if you had business cards, names, addresses, that type of thing. That would be, yeah.
Small print jobs.
Small print jobs,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the linotype, you had molten lead
Yes.
that would come down, so it's quite a bit of heat and
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was melting that lead. It was a lead alloy, like lead and tin and stuff in it.
It was an alloy.
Because the lead is so soft, it would wear out so fast.
oh, okay. So they had to add a
yeah,
hardener.
something hardener.
Hardener too. Was there any danger? Were you, if a person was using?
No, not unless you were like cleaning the Ludlow machine and you had to clean the pot.
Okay, so it
And,
was molten when
yes,
you
it
started
was, yeah.
to clean it.
Yeah, you had to turn the machine on early in the morning. It was on a timer and it would come on so the lead would be melted and would shut down overnight, and it would be just a pot of solid lead.
Solid lead. Now that, once you had your lines of type from either the Ludlow or the linotype, did you remelt that or did you keep?
Oh yes, yes. There was a box where you discarded the type if it got worn, and these lines they will wear after a while.
Okay.
And so you would always cast it in, and it was always interesting to me that some of the terms used in the printing trade was, well, biblical or from the Bible or something, but the place where the discarded type was tossed in, that box was called the hell box. And when I started in the trade as an apprentice, I was called a printer's devil. So,
Okay.
so
Did you
terms
eventually
that,
become
floated through there? Yeah.
what when you were a full printer? Did they have just another name, or did they just?
Well, then you became a journeyman printer. It was 6 years to become a journeyman, to learn the
so
full
a long,
trade. Yeah.
a long
Yeah.
period of training.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a person could get a certificate or
Yes, you would get a diploma, and that set you free to travel or journey wherever you wanted to get a job.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, so that's where the term journeyman. You could leave your apprenticeship.
You could hit the road.
Hit the road. So you were there from grade 9, and did you work summers? And
yes,
weekends?
I worked summers between 9 to grade 11, and then I went full time, completely full time, and I finished grade 11. I'm sorry that I never completed and graduated, but that's what I did. Yeah. I love the printing trade.
The printing was your passion that you had. Yeah. Now, there's another type of printing that I've heard you mention, and it's called offset printing.
Yes, that's what is basically everything is offset printing now, and that moved from the type, the handset type and the liner type and all that sort of thing to a metal plate. Something like, you remember the old Gestetners with the stencil? It was the same idea, only the aluminum plates, you took a picture, you set everything up and took a picture of it, photographed it negative, and then you burned the image onto a plate, which of course it was backwards on the plate, the same as the type, and it would be hooked to a big drum on the presses, the offset presses, and you could do full color on it, and the image, it was a combination of the ink and water, or a water substance, and the water would come down over the plate and lie on the bare part of the plate where there's no image, and then the ink rollers would come down over it and it would adhere to the image on the plate, and they would print if multiple colors. Full color was a 3-press operation because you had to do the yellow and the blue and the red.
So, did you do any offset printing at
Yes,
Bart?
I worked on the offset presses as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've worked on
the whole gamut, I guess. Yeah.
And even now, you do some digital printing.
Yes, through my publisher program on my computer, I print, and I have a color printer and so on. So
when you got through school, eventually you started printing in Hampton.
Yes, I started the Atlantic Press in Hampton. That was in 1961.
Okay.
I was doing my 3rd year of Bible school at the Atlantic Bible Institute on the Lakeside Road, which is now Hampton Bible Camp.
Okay.
And we had the opportunity to get this letterpress and later an offset press, and so I started the Atlantic Press there.
So you say letterpress, was that like a handset?
Yeah, that would be the handset liner type. This type of thing, offset, was the aluminum plates.
So you had two presses there, or two?
Yeah, two processes.
2 presses.
Yeah.
And you printed there until approximately when?
I graduated in '62 when we started the press in '61, and then in 1972 we felt our work was finished there, and so we had passed the Atlantic Press over to Bart and Helen Boyd, and they eventually moved it into Hampton. That's how Atlantic Press came to be in Hampton.
Well, that's quite a history of printing. I guess we didn't go back to Gutenberg and his
not quite that far back, but it was very similar to Gutenberg.
It wouldn't be, like the handset wouldn't be completely different at all from what that early press was.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. I don't know way back in Gutenberg's day, but it was the individual letters and all that. Yeah. So they had some kind of a press that you cranked the pressure onto the...
Oh, that's where the word press comes from.
Yeah, you press the paper to the
pushed
type.
It down. So printing is really quite a varied and intricate trade.
Yeah,
there's a lot to it.
Very.
Yeah. And you sort of, well, you go back to the earliest part, or somewhat early, with the handset, and then you've come up through all.
Yes.
And today you're doing.
Well, I learned the whole thing, for which I am thankful, because I was able to operate the Atlantic Press, and I loved it. And I still do. I do stuff with my computer now, and make booklets and things for people. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing this with us, and
thank you.
We appreciate it.